It doesn't matter where you go, who you're with, or what you're doing. No matter the case, they'll always be there. Pokemon. There is no escape. They infiltrate your house. They start with the kitchen, and they work their way up until it's like they're almost a part of your house. You know what? When you got all these, I don't think it matters all that much. Pokemon are a big part of my life. I admittedly have tried to repress them from my gaming memories. But I've also got some fond gaming memories with Pokemon. And it's hard for me to just pretend like it never happened. I think regardless of how you feel about Pokemon, however stigmatized they are in your community, or however you feel about them as like authentic RPGs, you can't deny the success of the series. And I think it's been overall beneficial to the video game industry as a whole. With that, I've invited my friend Michael to discuss what makes all of these generations of Pokemon worth checking out. And this podcast is going to be broken into two. In today's episode, we'll look at the first three generations and what makes them so special. And with that, enjoy the Majority Cast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Majority Cast. I have a very special guest with me. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, this is Michael, otherwise known as Awesomestuff HD on YouTube.
It's a pleasure to have you, and we've missed you in the year that you've been gone. But I don't want to pry too much into that. I'm sure you had your reasons for leaving YouTube, but I definitely appreciated your presence while you were there. I thought you brought a nice insight into the kind of stuff that you cover, like RPGs and reviews, topics. So thank you for joining me. It was a pleasure to become reacquainted with you via Twitter.
Yes. Yeah, I've been on Twitter a lot. I like being on Twitter a lot.
Yeah, I'm getting pulled in. I enjoy it. It's a nice little social media platform. But I digress. Today, we are here to discuss a very important topic, and that is Pokemon. And I reached out to you with this idea because I noticed on Twitter that you were going back and replaying a lot of the titles, and it just so happened to align with my playing of one of the newer games on the 3DS. And I felt like you'd be a good person to discuss the topic of Pokemon with, and I figured we could make a interesting kind of podcast style video out of it. I guess what I want to start with is like, what's your history with Pokemon?
So, with Pokemon, I started with Pokemon Red in the Game Boy Color era, and I really liked it a lot. I ended up buying the other versions, Blue and Yellow. I played through the game a few times, start to finish. I really liked it. And then Gold, Silver came out, and I got Silver. Ended up playing that a ton. And then I got Crystal when that came out, and I played that a lot as well. And then I basically, around the time Ruby and Sapphire came out, I went on a hiatus from the series for over a decade. So I basically have not been in one Pokemon game since Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal, prior to getting back into the series recently.
Hmm. I had a little bit more deep of a relationship with Pokemon. I remember I was very young and impressionable when I played the first one, and everyone at the it was like I was at a camp or something, right? And everyone had Game Boys, so it was only natural that I got a Game Boy and I started playing Pokemon, and I started linking up with other people and trading and battling. And from there, I bought every game up until the fifth generation, and I got back into it with the 3DS, and then we'll go more into that later. What I wanted to do for the podcast today is to really just break down each of the generations and just kind of weigh the positives and negatives. And since you've been so fresh, on a lot of these, I feel like you'll have a lot to offer.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of the series. I've been beating like game after game. I've been pretty much on like almost like a marathon with the series. So I feel like for me, this would be probably the best time ever for me to talk about Pokemon because of all the games of the series I've been playing like back to back to back.
Hmm. I think it's almost like a 20-year anniversary at this point. I don't know the exact date, but I think 1998 might have been the year North America got it.
Right. Yeah, it's been some time. It's been a very long running series. Very, very successful, popular, well liked series from Nintendo and Game Freak.
Hmm. And it all started with that red and blue, and in Japan, green.
Yeah, and the game was a huge like cultural phenomenon when it came out here in the United States. I remember like everyone was playing it on Game Boy, like everybody.
Hmm. It's so true. And I mean, I just happened to grow up with it, right? I was young, and you basically played Pokemon, and even it was almost popular to like bag on Pokemon too, like to say, "Oh, it's a kids game." But I mean, it had its perks, and I think one of the best things about that initial game is that it was really an introduction for a lot of people into turn-based games.
Right, and that's the interesting thing about Pokemon is that JRPGs aren't as like big here as like saying like Japan or other places. And yet Pokemon like exploded in popularity. Like people love the turn-based combat of it.
Right. I mean, it's almost like you can say like, "Oh, I love JRPGs," and Pokemon's not a real JRPG, but you almost have Pokemon to thank for getting them over here.
Yeah, a lot of success of the genre could be attributed to Pokemon.
100%. So, how do you feel about that first generation of red, blue, and I guess we could talk about yellow separately, but it's up to you.
So red, blue, and yellow, I really like them a lot still, but they have aged a bit. One of the big things about the first generation games is that there's a lot of like broken gameplay mechanics. Like you'll almost always get critical hits, and it's to the point where the critical hit ratio it's like so unusually high. You'll have like a Pokemon that's like 3 levels below your current Pokemon you encounter in the wild, and they hit you for maybe 10% of your health, and then you underestimate them, and they hit you with a critical and take off like half your health and kill you. Um, Another issue with the game was the special stat, which basically special attack and special defense were combined into one stat. And so because of that, certain Pokemon like Snorlax could get a move called Amnesia that boosted his special stat by 2 stacks each time he used it in battle. And so you could use that 3 times in a row, and you basically be boosting both his special attack and special defense by like 6 times, which is insane. Because Snorlax already has really high HP, really high attack power, and really high regular defense. And so you up that special stat, it becomes unstoppable.
I used to hate Alakazam. There was no super effective move because the only two types that are super effective are Bug and Ghost. And neither of those types have any attack that is genuinely Bug or Ghost.
Right, and that's a big issue. That's actually a very good point. A big issue with Generation 1 is psychic types are super overpowered. Because the dark type that was introduced in Gold and Silver wasn't here yet. That was the counter to psychic. Right. So for psychic, I mean, like you mentioned, you have those two counters, but both those types of Pokemon in the original Generation 1 are very weak. Like they're just not a very good counter to psychic. And Alakazam and even just Kadabra, because I played recently, and since I was playing it on emulator, I couldn't trade with anyone. I had to use Kadabra the whole game. But like he is like outrageously overpowered. Like he can take down almost anything in the game.
Hmm. aside from that, I mean, do you feel like those, I don't want to call them glitches, but, those aspects of the game, do you feel like they're forgivable?
I think the glitches are forgivable. I actually like the glitches in Pokemon Gen 1 because they're a lot of fun. Like being able to like walk through walls where you normally can't walk to get to areas quicker and whatnot. I think it makes speed runs of the game very interesting.
Hmm. I miss those days. I miss, like, I don't know, putting R Wings and Legend of Zelda and, yeah, I don't know, tangent, sorry. I miss the days where you could really, like, hack into a game naturally.
Right. And then so some other issues I guess with Gen 1 would be like attacks like Rap that like Ekans like the snake Pokemon
Oh,
does.
no, don't
Because
remind me.
Rap could last like 10 turns in a row where you could do nothing in Gen 1, and that was a big flaw.
And rap is so weak, too. It's just like a waste of your time.
Yeah. And so it could really drag battles on and make like what should be like a 30-second battle end up taking like 4 or 5 minutes.
Hmm.
And then a issue with it, since it's one of the older games, it's missing a lot of the gameplay conveniences of the later games, like the ability to sprint or the removals of the HMs and like Sun and Moon and whatnot. There's a lot of those kinds of features missing, like those quality of life, like gameplay features.
Hmm.
Um, Another thing I would say that's good though about Gen 1 is like the level design, like the areas, like the dungeons, like the caves, and the different places, like the Team Rocket hideout that you go to. The puzzles in them are very good. I feel like they're long enough to where they don't feel too long, but they're not too short. The areas feel like they're balanced very well. Because in future Pokemon generations, I feel like you get in a cave, and the cave has like 2 rooms, and 10 minutes later you're already through the cave.
Hmm.
And I felt like in Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, the caves like it would last like 30 to 40 minutes. There are a lot of battles, a lot of items to find, a lot of really cool Pokemon to catch. And one of the things I will give Generation 1 is that the Pokemon designs are still some of the best in the entire series. Like all the starters are really cool. Squirtle, Charmander, uh, Bulbasaur. All of them are very iconic still to this day. They give very cool evolutions. And there's a lot of other really cool Pokemon like Snorlax, Gyarados, a whole ton of really cool Pokemon that were, introduced in that generation from the very beginning.
I don't know that there's one Pokemon from that list that I dislike. I mean, even like the Jigglypuffs or the Chanseys, like all of those designs were classic, and I feel like you said, the design of the game in general was just classic. If you think about the gym leaders, like I think like they are the iconic gym leaders, or like the Elite Four, where like the last match is with Lance, with when he brings up dragons, and then the end of the game, and like going to that cave to find Mewtwo was like an adventure, or even the Rock Cave early in the game. To me, like the game really hit that sense of adventure and like trainer leaving home. It just got the theme down really well. So I always appreciate the first generation for that.
Right, yeah. Some of the gym leaders, I mean, they're still very iconic, like Brock, Misty. Almost everyone who's a Pokemon fan knows who that is. And it's just very memorable in that way. And I think the character designs in the game are really cool. A lot of the gym leaders are really well designed. And the music is really, really good.
Oh my gosh, it's to die for. It's so classic. I forget like the bicycle theme, like surf theme even.
The gym leader battle theme, like Gen 1 still probably has my favorite gym leader battle theme out of all the gens. Like I really, really like it.
Man, it's just the jingles. The jingles are great.
Yeah. And the route themes too, you always remember like the route themes, like when you start out at Route 1 and then you go to the later routes, it all sticks with you. You can always like think back and remember it.
Yeah, I'm literally remembering themes as we're talking about it. This is great. So let's take this opportunity. I think we can skip yellow. We'll talk about gold, silver, crystal in Generation 2. You want to start?
Sure, I'll go. So silver and gold were a pretty big jump for the series, and I remember being really impressed with them because, you had the full color palette as opposed to like red and blue, where it was like all red or all blue. So you have the full color palette, you have more Pokemon, and one of the craziest things about Gold and Silver was that you beat all 8 of the gym leaders and then the Elite Four, but the game isn't over yet. Then you go back to the region of Kanto from Gen 1, and you got to beat all the gym leaders there again, and then you got a final battle that is one of the coolest final battles in like any game ever because it's a huge plot twist. I don't know how heavy we want to go in spoilers. It's not a big story game, but I don't know if anyone wants me to spoil it, but
We'll do it. We'll do a timestamp. So if you want to hear the spoiler, you can share it, and just I'd say listeners, you can skip, and I'll tell you where to go as a in the comments or something. I don't know.
okay. So basically, you beat all 8 of the gym leaders in the first region, you beat the Elite Four, and then you go back to Kanto from the first games, and you beat all the gym leaders there, and then you go to the top of Mount Silver, and the final boss of the game is Trainer Red, the protagonist of the first gen games. So if you played through the first gen games, it's like facing your former self. You like have to overcome your previous self essentially, and it's a brilliant plot twist. Like a great final battle, very challenging too.
It is so challenging. I remember it's like the level of Red's team or Blue's team. I forget which one it is, depending on the version you play. They were like level 80.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of one of my flaws I do want to go into later though. But Pokemon Gold and Silver really cool starters. Like I think Cyndaquil is one of the coolest starters, especially his evolutions when he becomes his third form, Typhlosion. I think that's one of the coolest starter Pokemon. The game brought a lot of really great changes, like the EXP share, which allowed you to have another Pokemon get half the EXP from a battle, which cut down a lot of the level grinding, which is really good. And other really good features of the game was like there were more HMs, like you had the waterfall one, which gave you new ways to travel, all the additional Pokemon. The fact that it had like the longest kind of main story of the series because of the 2 regions. And the music in it is probably the best soundtrack of like the entire Pokemon series, I'd say. Either that or like Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah, I agree that Gold and Silver really did a lot for the series. I loved that addition of extra gym leaders. Like it's almost like doubling up your adventure. And like you said, that post game, like the Mount Silver, there's like a little intersection between the maps where you get to that. And I just remember it like being a journey. And the Pokemon you encounter there are classic. I think like you get Skarmory up there, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember
Yeah,
exactly.
Skarmory the Metal Bird, right? That Pokemon is awesome.
I love Skarmory. Umbreon, that was another classic one from that generation. The bear, it's not Teddy Ursura, but Ursaring. There were a lot of like they continued with the really cool Pokemon designs, and everything was just expanded. More Pokemon, more places. You got it in more color. It's just it did live up to like the idea of being a sequel. It just amplified everything. And I still prefer the original for being classic. It's kind of nostalgia blindsided, but
No, it's
um,
the same with me too. I know Gold and Silver are very liked by the fan base, but I actually have more fun with the original Gen 1 than Gen 2, but I still like Gen 2 a lot.
yeah, I just don't know that they could top some of those classic things like the Mewtwo battle or like the 3 birds. Like the dogs were okay, I thought, but I just thought everything about that first game was classic. You said something about a flaw before. Do you want to talk about that?
Right. One of the flaws of the game is that when you get to Mount Silver, there's like that big level jump for the final battle. Like you were saying, the final boss is got like level 80 Pokemon. And the highest level Pokemon you can encounter in there is like level 56. So it makes leveling your Pokemon up for that final battle take way longer than it should. And you have to do a lot of level grinding, and that kind of brings the game down a little bit at the end.
Mm, that's a fair point. It does have the XP share, but the XP share only does so much. Was it? Couldn't you rebattle boss? I'm sorry, not boss. Gym leaders though. Like, what? Didn't you have the option to rebattle them?
I think so, because wasn't there the cell phone you get in Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and you could like call someone and then like rematch them?
I believe you could. So I remember back in the day when I played it, I used to exploit that feature and just rebattle the gym leaders. Because I mean, would you turn down another battle with a gym leader? Those are like the most iconic battles in the game.
Right,
So that's
those are the best battles.
I thought that was a nifty feature, and that helped me overcome the level grind in a way that was kind of engaging. And wasn't there like there's a place in it's either Viridian City or Pallet Town where you could fight trainers that had high level Pokemon. I can't remember exactly.
For that, I think there may have been, but I can't remember either necessarily.
I think that was how I was able to um, jump up my team and get them strong enough.
Yeah, because for me, at the end of my recent replay through of Silver, I pretty much just got to the final area, Mount Silver, and then I just leveled there for like several hours trying to get my team high enough so I could take on the final boss.
Uh, I'd say maybe just if you do play it again, just keep an eye out for that. My memory could be mistaking me, but
Well, that's one thing I've actually noticed about the Pokemon series. You get more experience from trainer battles and gym leader battles than you do wild Pokemon, even if they're the same level.
hmm. Yeah, that's true. And I think it comes down to like because the Pokemon are tamed or something, so they think you should get more XP for it. I don't know.
Right. And then another thing I want to say too, I think the rival of Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal is really good. He's kind of like this jerk. He's this really like irritating character early on in the game,
Yeah, he steals
but it
a
makes you
Pokemon,
really
right?
like want to stop him. But later on, you actually end up beating him, and he congratulates you, and he's like, "Hey, just be careful up ahead. Make sure to heal your Pokemon." And it's like this drastic like character development. He really changes as the game goes on.
Hmm. That's awesome. I like that you brought that up. It's kind of like a narrative plot twist.
Right.
Cool.
Now, I guess another issue I have with Gold and Silver and Crystal is that the areas feel a lot shorter. The dungeons don't feel as like well designed as like Red, Blue, and Yellow. Like you'll go through a cave, it's like 2 rooms long, and like 5 minutes later you're already done with the cave, and it just feels like very anticlimactic. It doesn't feel like you went on much of an adventure, and so that's something I also think could have been improved in Gold, Silver, and Crystal.
Hmm. I think I don't remember it exactly, but I think for me it was made up by the fact that the maps were just so big. Like, couldn't you take the ferries between Kanto and Johto?
Correct.
So that was one thing. I wasn't there an airplane too in Saffron
I
City or
don't
something?
remember airplane.
I might be mistaken. Or it's like a metro rail transit.
Yeah, the train, right? But it has to be on a certain day, right?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. Oh, and this one included night and day cycles.
That's right.
So this game, it was pretty much it was a good advancement for the series.
Right.
You ready to jump into Gen 3, or do you have any last thoughts on Gen 2?
I'd say I'm ready for Gen 3.
All right, let's evolve. Evolve with the times. Generation 3. This is where, for most people, the series starts to lose its credibility. I like it. I enjoyed Generation 3, and both of us recently played the remakes, but I think just thinking back to the originals, there were a few things I appreciated. Like, I enjoyed. It felt a little more legendary than Gold and Silver did. Like, like the legendaries had some real substance to them. And they
Right.
were like,
The story of the game was actually really good. Like the enemy team, Team Magma, Team Aqua had it really good backstories, really well developed. The legendary Pokemon were well developed into the story and the world of the game too.
mm-hmm. I agree with you. I remember the story sticking out for me. Um, Almost like a conversation about what happens when you exploit the earth, and then, like Kyogre and Groudon, they become agitated, and then it starts torrentially downpouring, or it becomes like a heat stroke in the desert. and it's it's reflected pretty well in the game. And I feel like the remakes do it justice, but leaving that aside for the time being, um, I just that was probably the big selling point for me. And there were a couple other things like secret bases and oh, what else? I don't remember exactly. They added dive, but I enjoyed what the games did. It felt different. Like now you had Pokemon natures and you also had abilities. So it was becoming more advanced with the combat and with the team mechanics. And it just added more depth to the series. Where do you stand on Gen 3?
So for Gen 3, we're talking strictly about the originals, right? No remakes, or do you want to talk about the remakes too?
What's easier for you?
I mean, I'd like to go into both, kind of.
Sure.
So I think Gen 3, I really, really like a lot. It might be one of my favorite gens. I think Ruby and Sapphire, they did a lot of really great things to improve the gameplay of the series a lot. One big thing was adding the sprint feature. Being able to get to locations faster by sprinting was really good. I thought that the double battles were one of the greatest additions to the entire Pokemon series. The 2v2 battles, they add so much more strategy to the battles. You have so many more tactics you can do in the double battles as opposed to the 1v1 battles. And the music is really good. I know a lot of people make fun of Ruby and Sapphire's soundtrack for having the trumpets and whatnot, but I think the soundtracks of Ruby and Sapphire are really good, especially the Wild Pokemon battle theme and the Trainer battle theme and the Elite Four battle theme. Those are really good. The city themes are really good. It's one of my favorite soundtracks of the series.
Hmm. I don't remember from the 8-bit version, but I felt like the remastered ones were really good.
Yeah, the remakes did a really, really good job with the soundtrack. And that's rare because I find in a lot of games when they do the remake and they give it like the orchestral rearrangement, it doesn't sound as good as the original. But in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the remakes, they did a great job with the soundtrack. It sounds a lot like the original. It's very faithful in that regard, but it's improved.
Hmm. I gotta think back because I know the double battles, like that's definitely a staple. And I think the first time I got in a double battle, I was just like, whoa, like this is new. And I enjoyed that. It was a new combat mechanic. They added specific Pokemon just for double battles, like Plusle and Minun. And also with the abilities, it changed things up. Like you could use Earthquake and it might hit your team member, but if you have a flying Pokemon, it's not going to hit. So it really changed up the strategy. And I think, if you were going into Pokemon for the first time, that might be a little overwhelming. But for people who had played and wanted more from the games, I feel like it was a good step up to a more competitive scene.
Right. I think the 2v2 is one of the best changes. Like, one thing I really hope for the later games of the series is that they actually make it for all the battles in the entire single player, like 2v2 or 3v3. Because feel like if you have more Pokemon, that would greatly increase the amount of strategy and depth to the battles and the combat system of the game. And you brought up a good point, like the team building aspect. Like you could have one Pokemon that does Earthquake, which does a lot of damage, very powerful attack, but it can't hit flying Pokemon. So you could have a flying Pokemon with that Pokemon, and it'll avoid getting hit by the attack, and it'll do a ton of damage to the enemy trainer's Pokemon. Now, some things I'll say that were good about the remake too. The graphics were amazing for a 3DS game. I'll say first off, like really, really good. Um, Another good thing about the gameplay of the remake is that you get the EXP share earlier in the game, and it gives EXP to all the Pokemon, which I think is a very good thing because it cuts down on the amount of level grinding you got to do significantly.
Hmm. And the game is actually pretty long too. Even with the XP share on, I think I put a good like 20 hours in or 25. And substantial. There's also some extra post-game content that I didn't really touch in the remakes. I don't know if you had any experience with that.
The post game, not much. I mean, I've done the post game in gold and silver and red blue, but not much in the later games. So I'm mostly more of a main story person.
Yeah, same here. The remakes did them, and I didn't really care at that point to keep exploring because I felt like I got the bulk of my adventure out. I do want to say though that Emerald has one of the best post games of any of the Pokemon games. I don't know if you have. Yeah, it was the Battle Frontier, and there was like 7 different types of battles you could engage in, and you had to make sure your team was really top notch. That to me was like an extra layer of just like goodness, and really like it really did bring the fighting nature of the series out. So I appreciated it for that.
Now, some things I will say that I felt were flaws with Omega and Ruby, or no, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, or the originals, is that I felt the region wasn't too interesting. Like it wasn't very varied in the locations. The cities felt kind of dull. I didn't think the region was that interesting. There was way too much water, and not enough land, not enough variety in the locations.
Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
Wait, what's up?
I laughed because it reminded me of the IGN review.
No, I see what you mean. But yeah, it was just, it's basically like a lot of foresty, kind of grasslands type of areas. And then you got like one water area, a few cave areas, and then it's just mostly like water.
One thing that the remakes did that I didn't appreciate was that they consolidated the adventuring in the same ways that you mentioned earlier. Like areas that were dungeons are either like one layer deep or just like not very expansive at all, where you could just kind of breeze through them. And I don't know why the game took me so long because it seemed like there wasn't as much area to explore.
Yeah, that is kind of a flaw with Ruby and Sapphire. It's kind of like Gold and Silver for me in that regard. Like you go through like what is it, the Petalburg Woods, the forest area,
Hmm.
and it's like 2 screens long, and that's it. And it's like 5 minutes, and you're literally out of there, even fighting all the trainers and everything.
Right.
And that's kind of like a reoccurring problem in some of the games of the series. Is like the areas feel way too short, and like you get through them way too quick.
Hmm. On the plus side, though, you mentioned the graphics, and this game definitely looks good as a remake. I actually really like how the original games look as well. Like, I remember you could see the water levels fluctuate, and you could see the reflection of your protagonist in the water. So there was some attention to detail in the upgrade from Game Boy Color to Game Boy Advance that I just wanted to call attention to. Hmm. Any final thoughts on Gen 3?
Gen 3, I think it's kind of underrated. I really like Gen 3 a lot. I think it brought a lot of great gameplay features. I really like the Pokemon of it a lot, but it does have a few flaws, but I think it's probably one of the best generations for me, at least.
Cool. I'm going to save my thoughts on that for later. We're at about the 30-minute portion, and I want to just take a little break. I hope that's okay with you.
All right.
Cool. And we'll be back to resume with Gens 4 through 6? Are there 6 generations? I don't even remember. After the interlude. Stay tuned.